that weren't here last week, we started a series that I titled Divine Light. And last week we talked about the Magi. And we looked at their goals, their aspirations, and some of the things that they did that maybe can help us in our own walk of faith. One of the things they determined was what they were looking for, that what they were seeking is the way I worded it. They were seeking this newborn king that was being born into the world. They made a commitment to look for him. The other thing that they determined is where are they going to look? And they looked at some of the historical prophets. They looked at the scrolls that have been written about the Messiah, the coming Messiah, and so forth. And they determined where they were going to look for this newborn king, even though they got it wrong. And finally, they determined what they were going to give. And I made a statement last week that I don't think you can celebrate Advent. I don't think you can celebrate the gift that God has given into the world unless we have a like-minded heart where we're willing to give and give of ourselves, give of maybe our time, our talents, our resources, whatever God lays in front of us, whatever opportunities. I think we need that mentality that we want to give, and especially because of all that God has given to you and I. Today I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the real cost of following a divine sign, which is exactly what the Magi did. They saw a star. They researched it. These guys had all the information behind it. They knew where they were going, what they wanted to do. They knew what they were going to set off to look at and to do. And they knew that there would be a cost associated with it because they wanted to know, they wanted to find, this newborn king that was coming into the world. I want you to think about committing yourself into your own long, sometimes uncomfortable journey of faith. Because if you think the Christian journey is a piece of cake, you got it dead wrong. It's not the case. It's worth it, don't get me wrong. It's a wondrous thing, but it's difficult. It's hard. These men, as well as you and I, have a calling, or they had a calling from God, just like us. And they recognized this calling through this particular star that they were watching and looking for. You see, the Magi were scholars. They were astronomers. And they were kings also. And they see this very unique celestial event take place that they had been looking for and studying. And for them, this was a verifiable sign that the Messiah was coming into the world. Verifiable. There it is. We've been waiting for it. We've been looking for it. There it is. And it was an objective call to action for those guys. And it fit well within their series or their realm of expertise. Because again, these guys were scholars. They were watching the stars in the skies. And this wasn't some sudden blind vision that took place. But this was a very calculated, professional observation that led these three men to a personal conviction. Have you experienced the same thing in your life? See, this star was confirmation of what they had hoped for, what they looked for, what the scriptures had told them to look for. But it required a response outside of their normal routine. Just like for you and I. Just like today in Advent. They went on a very long journey. We all know the story. But they realized the immediate cost of that journey. See, they didn't just write a letter, or send some flowers or something like that. They didn't know. These men, they packed up their belongings. They must have hired guards, if not military escort. Historically, we know these things. They secured the provisions that were necessary for a very long journey, an arduous journey. And they left the comfort of their homes, their kingdoms. And maybe a modern parallel for us today might be someone that's called to mission work. Or all of a sudden you find that, I need to change careers. That's a tough one for anybody here that's done it. You know how hard it is. Maybe they had to, going into missionary work, and maybe they had to learn how to live on a reduced income. Well, that's not exciting, is it? To look forward to living on less. Maybe going into missionary work, you got to look at, I'm going to be moving to somewhere I really don't want to go. I don't want to go there. I can't help but wonder, did the Magi feel the same way at times? I'm really not sure I want to do this. And what about waiting and always hoping that maybe a particular situation you're in will change at some point? This waiting. Oh my gosh, are we ever going to get there? Oh my gosh, are we doing the right thing? Oh my gosh, are we on the right pathway? In our active, growing, and saving relationship with God, it's not enough to just simply intellectually agree with God or intellectually agree with what He's saying to us. It requires a very physical, financial, and a relational effort. You see, it's not enough to just agree or to understand what God is doing. It demands a response. It demands a response. And it's not just for the special people. It's not just for the Magi or the people we read. It's for each and every person that wants to follow God. It's an extremely biblical theme. To follow God requires a response. Jesus addressed this issue that the Magi and you and I face. One day it's recorded in the book of Luke. I'll let you find it. I won't tell you where it is. I want you to go look for it. And here's what it says. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not sit down first and account the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? What's he saying? He's saying if you're going to go somewhere and do something, you're going to follow some spiritual path, you're going to look for me, you better make sure you're willing to make the payments, to endure the hardships, to do the work, all of the things that are required in the journey. Because it's foolish not to. You know, the challenge here is to walk by faith and not by sight. To walk by faith and not by sight. We've heard that 1,000 times in the past, and it never gets any easier to apply to human life. You know, it can be a very horrific journey. I want to look at this from a very realistic and a practical stance as far as what the Magi went through, what they endured. You know, we've all seen the children's play where they dressed up like the Magi and they would run along and make cardboard camels and all that stuff. That wasn't the reality. These guys left from somewhere in Persia or maybe Babylon, and they traveled to Judea. Anybody have a rough idea how many miles that was? Somewhere around 800. Walking, riding on a camel maybe. They probably did ride on camels because they were rich. And it would take months to make this journey. Not just, okay, let's go and we'll be back next week. Take care of everything. No. They had to make all the preparations in order to be gone away from their kingdoms and all that they had going on for months, not knowing how long it would take, not knowing exactly when they would get there, what they would find, when they would return. They had no idea. And the physical dangers, oh my gosh. There were lots of people along the pathway that would be happily take advantage of them. You got gold in there? Let me have some of that. Oh, myrrh? I could sell that. Frankincense? Yeah, not a problem. You see, these guys, and they were rich. These were kings. These were people that had resources. And to travel that far, there were a lot of people that were willing to rob them of the things that they had. That was just one of the dangers. There was harsh weather. They would have endured desert heat through this journey, as well as the freezing temperatures of the mountains. And they had to be prepared for all of this. They had to be prepared. Regardless, we know that December was not the time that Jesus was born. We know that. Traditionally, it was established by the church many, many centuries ago, and we've kind of stayed with it. But there would have been tremendous difficulties just in regards to the weather during the time that they traveled. They didn't have GPSs, of course, and the star was probably a simple indicator of the general direction to head, not necessarily the pinpoint direction to head. It wasn't a permanent beacon. For safety, they even had to travel mostly known roads. If they got off the main roads, then they really put themselves in great danger. And there are some historical documents that say they did have some type of military escort at various different times. Probably because they had to. And then there was the aspects of the boredom and the doubt. You ever have boredom and doubt in your faith journey? Or is it perfect? You ever had boredom, doubt? Weeks would turn into months. And they're following the star. It says, go that way. Are we really supposed to go that way? Are you sure it's not over that way and we're looking at the wrong one? Come on. There would have been an onslaught of questions probably circling all through their minds and hearts in the camps at night. Was the star still leading us? Did they misinterpret the signs? And then there's the aspect of when the initial excitement, oh man, there's the star. We've been searching for this thing, and there it is, and we're going to make a journey, and we're going to find this newborn king. Well, after a while, that wears off in your faith. And the initial excitement wears off, and you're still moving forward, and yet there's all these obscurities, and the travel is slow and arduous, and it's like, oh my gosh, are we ever going to get there? Are we doing the right thing? Have you ever felt that way? Maybe a real life example for us would be when we're setting off on the journey that we think God wants us to follow. And all of a sudden, unemployment hits. Oh, how long is that going to last? Is this really part of the plan, Lord? Is this something that I'm supposed to endure? Or maybe I'm supposed to just throw in the towel and go back or what am I supposed to do? Maybe it's a sustained illness. Maybe there's a time in your life where you're following God and you just get sicker and sicker and sicker, and it's like, what are we doing, Lord? You see, the journey is always difficult. It's never a rose garden, friends. Historically, you can look at it. Biblically, you can look at it. Yes, there are always good times and bad times, but there are hardships involved with following God. One of my favorites as a pastor is you spend years, and I know many pastors, I used to interview pastors every year to renew their licenses, and I hear this story every single year. I'm pouring my heart into this congregation, and I don't see any results. Really? What did you expect? Did you expect everybody to just leap forward and say, oh, wonderful? No, it's a difficult journey. We come alongside of each other. We grab each other by the hand and walk together if we need to. Whatever we got to do, we are together in this journey. And that's one of the reasons I love this church, because I really feel that way here. I think we're all together on the journey. And it's hard. And it's also a blessing sometimes. Consider this. Our friend Abraham had to consider this. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. There's the promise. And he went out. He did it. Not knowing where he was going. I'm sure the Magi could relate to that one. We're going. I got a ton of money invested in this trip. I've left a whole lot behind. I'm following. There it is. I see the star. But I really don't know where we're going. Am I doing the right thing? You ever felt that way in your walk of faith? You know, where maybe you feel God calling you to do a particular ministry or maybe it might be a one-time event. I don't know. And you're like, I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing. Well, you know what? You're in good company with the Magi because they didn't always do the right thing either. We'd like to believe they did. But the truth of the matter is they did not. They messed up. And we'll get to that. When the star stopped, the Magi had to rely on what they had learned up until that point, which was through Scripture and prophecy. And they started to calculate where they should go. And they went to the wrong place. They went to Jerusalem. Now, okay, that makes sense, right? That's supposed to be God's headquarters, right, so to speak, and the temple there and all the priests and everybody, and certainly that's where the new king's going to be, right? Let's go to Jerusalem. I mean, after all, the star is kind of in that direction. Well, when they did that, what happened? Innocently, naively, they tell this ruthless king about a competitor. Guess what? We're here to worship the new king. Herod says, what are you talking about? A new king? Are you nuts? Well, we know the story. Magi take off and they go looking for the Christ child in another place. And the whole time, Herod is just calculating in his mind how he's going to get rid of this guy. I'm going to overcome this king and get rid of him. Honestly, by going to Jerusalem to begin with, the Magi put the Christ child in great danger. Now, this is not something that God didn't foresee coming, of course. But just like our journey of faith, their journey was also messy. Ours can be messy too. It often is. Difficult and messy. Proverbs kind of gives us a highlight on this one. When faith starts to get messy, when faith starts to get controversial, or I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here, or you want me to go, well, I don't know. I don't see the end result here, God. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. And do not lean on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Even though they went to Jerusalem, they probably made some other wrong turns in the journey. God got them there. He got them there. After months and months, the star leads them not to a palace, but to this little, humble, some kind of a household, not a stable. And again, this was likely months after the birth of Christ that they actually showed up. They expected a king, someone born into royalty, someone that would be fittingly deserving of these wondrous, expensive gifts that they brought. But instead, what did they find? A very humble, little Jewish family that probably had very little. And just by accepting that, they had to overcome their own cultural and political expectations. Because they would have expected a king. They would have expected somebody with authority and, born into a house with authority and so forth. But they didn't get what they were looking for. Have you gotten what you're looking for in your faith? Finding God in the unexpected and the mundane things sometimes challenges us. But God is there. Might be in the soup kitchen. You might find God in the relationship with a difficult coworker at times. You might find God in the discipline of prayer rather than just a spectacular event. When the Magi showed up at this little teeny house, and we know that they fell down and they worshiped him, this is where their years of searching and all of their efforts, this was the return on their investment. They put all this time and energy into finding the star, looking for the star, researching the star, putting everything together so that they could make this 800-mile trip. And they went through all of this stuff for months. And what did they get? A little teeny house. A little baby. A little Jewish couple. That's it? No fanfare? No CNN news? Nothing spectacular? Is that what we look for at Advent in our own life? It's got to be something spectacular. It does not, my friends. It does not. You see, what we're looking for is God himself. And God comes into our life and into the world in the most unassuming ways at times. These guys poured out their wealth and everything for this king. And yet all they found was a young Jewish couple with a baby. We know that when they left, they did not go back to Herod. They did not go back to Jerusalem. They were warned in a dream to go somewhere else because, of course, Herod was going to kill him. And then he was going to find out where the baby was and then go kill him. By not going back, they really did risk almost an international conflict, being hunted down by Herod. This guy was a nutball. He was a madman. And he would have been so incensed that he probably thought about sending his army to go chase him down when he realized they weren't coming back. But I think one day we'll realize and see that God intervened in that and did not let that happen. It was a very risky decision that they made not to go back. See, faith, following God is sometimes quite messy. Quite messy. Their journeys of faith, as well as ours, it always needs to end with a change in who we are. If what you've gone through in your walk of faith up until today, all of your life, you put it all in there up until today, if it hasn't changed who you are, then you got to ask the question, what are we doing? Are you the same person that you were when you started? Are you the same person that you were a year ago? Are you the same person this week than you were last week? These are hard questions. Because I'm absolutely convinced that God allows us to go through these times of discernment, these times of difficulty, these journeys of faith, these walks to Jerusalem and to Bethlehem in our own life. He lets us go through these things so that we might grow and we might change. We might grow in our understanding of who God is and then learn to accept him, learn to accept his ways, learn how to have trust and faith in him. Learn how to have faith. It's not just something you flick the switch. Faith is a learned activity. It's a learned behavior. We learn it by learning to trust him more and more and more and more. Are we doing that? And during this time of the year, it's always so easy to kind of get off track because of all the lights and the bells and the whistles and all of these wondrous things. And, it really is. But is it changing who you are? Has the Advent season this year started to stir up something in your heart? Has it? And the only person that needs an answer is yourself. Yourself.